But what we have in this country right now is we have surrogates that are helping, that are working together, corporations, unions, and government, all working together to increase surrogate power. And then you see this all the time. Corporations, well, let give me an example. Our government, our Supreme Court, has a Supreme Court decision that says that corporations have the same rights as individual human beings. Well, that's obviously impossible. It's completely contradictory to what we just said, to what the founders knew in the Declaration of Independence. How can a surrogate have the same rights as an individual human being? But these corporations support the politicians. They pay into their campaigns. They support them in many, many ways. And so they've bought influence with the government. So the government helps them out. The government helps them become more powerful, and the corporations help the government maintain and grow its power. So it's a symbiotic relationship, and it's out of control. So, government protects corporations against environmental, being responsible for the environment. Environmental Protection Agency is, you know what it is? It's a protection racket. It's not protecting the environment, it's protecting the polluters. That's what it does. The greatest environmental problem we have in this country today is, what does anybody know? What is the most egregious destruction of our environment?
Cap and trade.
Chemtrails.
Cap and trade.
Chemtrails.
EPA.
Well, good audience. Nobody said global warming. If somebody says global warming, they get a timeout. No, the thing that can't be fixed is genetically modified organisms in our environment, which are now morphing with other organisms and creating things that we don't even know what the effect is going to be, and we don't know how we're going to get rid of them. So I would say that genetic mutation from genetically modified food and genetically modified organisms are really the most dangerous environmental problem we face today, because we don't know how we can fix it. I'm going to go ahead. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we just talked about this. So this is the structure. Let's review just quickly. This is what our founders created. Bottom-up structure. Now, this worked really, really well. We've had, even though there were influences to try to change this, even back then, for the first 100 years from the founding of our nation, we had a lot of freedom in this nation. And as a result of that, we created tremendous prosperity in this country. Unprecedented prosperity, unprecedented freedom, unprecedented opportunity for people to start from nothing and create success and wealth like never in the world before. Was that all pervasive in that way? By 1905, our country, with 6% of the land, 5% of the population, was producing more than half of virtually everything that was produced on the planet, including luxuries, transportation, food, houses, communications, everything. The prosperity was unprecedented. More people were moving here from all over the planet into this country to be able to participate in that freedom and that prosperity than any time in history. So yes, this worked. I mean, there's no question about it. The bottom-up, freedom-based government, where the government really wasn't part of their lives practically, played little role in their lives, worked very, very well. In fact, de Tocqueville, when he came here in the 1830s, he wrote his book, Democracy in America, said this. He was astonished, first of all, that government was invisible, because coming from Europe, government was all pervasive. But he said in the United States, throughout the colonies, and at that time there was more. It wasn't just the colonies; it was the states, and there were several more than in 1770. He said that wherever he went, he saw no evidence that government had involvement in people's lives, even local government. But here's what he said: everybody he met was a member of at least 7 or 8 different organizations. Everybody, everywhere he went, every community. People were involved in nonprofit organizations, and service clubs, and church-related organizations. And those organizations, those non-governmental, non-coercive, voluntary organizations, took care of the situations that needed to be taken care of in a community. If somebody didn't have a house, if they had a juvenile delinquent, or somebody had a substance abuse problem, somebody needed help, those organizations existed in a community to help one another. And government wasn't involved. And that really was unique. It was not like that in Europe. It wasn't like that anywhere else on earth. And so that was part of bottom-up. It's part of what happens. If people don't have to pay all the money that they make to support a government, they can put that money into their local communities and helping one another. Much easier. So that was the model that we had. Now, what's happened? Things have changed, haven't they?
Yeah.
So that power pyramid has been flipped upside down. The power is now here. I know you guys can think of a lot more than I can, but I'll just name a few things. Federal government now tells us what kind of light bulbs we can have, what kind of toilets we can have. The new Food Safety Act tells us that we can't sell vegetables out of our greenhouses. We can't have bake sales in our schools. That we have to vaccinate our children with these vaccines that have enough mercury in them to kill a male buffalo, an adult buffalo. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It goes on and on and on. So you all know that. And the federal government takes our money from individuals and families, and then it tells us how to educate our children. We get about 20% of the money that we send to the federal government in education money comes back to the individuals and families. 80% of it stays in the federal government to feed that bureaucracy. So this is a top-down model. It is not a bottom-up model. It is completely flipped around in the last 100 years. So how does this happen? Well, there's a lot of reasons. But what's amazing about Jefferson, because he's so perceptive, is he wrote this statement in 1781. I think it's really profound. The spirit of the times will alter. Our rulers will become corrupt. Our people careless. From the conclusion of this war, we shall be going downhill. It will not then be necessary to resort every moment to the people for support. They will be forgotten, therefore, and their rights disregarded. They will forget themselves, but in the sole faculty of making money, and will never think of uniting to effect a due respect to their rights. The shackles, therefore, will be made heavier and heavier, till our rights shall revive or expire in a convulsion. Isn't that powerful?
That's strong.
That's strong, man. He saw what was happening right now in 1781. Revolutionary War wasn't even. So what happens is this. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Government is the most powerful, it's the only entity, the only surrogate in society that can legally use force. So corrupt people will be attracted to that power. They will try to influence it and control it to get even more power. That's part of it. But also, as he says so clearly here, the people themselves will forget to pay attention. They will not be vigilant because they'll be tied up with other things. But he says this very interesting about a convulsion. My feeling is that convulsion started with the real estate bubble busting, with the stock market busting, with the massive inflationary activities of our government, Federal Reserve. And we are in a convulsion right now. We're right in the middle of it. And the government debt bubble hasn't burst yet, and the dollar bubble hasn't burst yet. And they will. And so we are in a convulsion. And it says here, it will revive or expire. Now, who do you think is going to determine whether it's going to our freedom is going to revive or expire?
We are.
The people.
That's right. Because the government's not going to revive our freedom. Okay, it's up to us. And we're the ones who have indigenous power. So what we have to do, folks, we have to flip this pyramid back over again. We have to go back to the bottom-up model where the power is with us are individuals and families, townships, civic organizations. We have to limit the state and the federal government. And to me, I've been in this fight now for over 20 years. The only solution I've seen that takes care of all problems in one fell swoop is the restoring the republic. Hey! Restore the republic and the lights go on. We didn't time that. That was God. That was God.
I timed it.
Wow. That was a religious experience.
That was religious.
Woo!
Thank you.
All right. So, boy, I couldn't have been more dramatic than that. All right. So, question is, how do we do that? We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. I just want to review a couple things about top-down versus bottom-up, and then we're going to get into the Republic real quick. Top 10 character. This came to me one night. I was thinking, how can I really explain this bottom-up versus top-down? Because really, what it comes down to is we have two fundamentally different qualities in those two organizational structures. Bottom-up is based on individuals and families. Now, what is the predominant emotion within a family? What holds a family together?
Love.
Okay. So we know that the bottom-up structure, the main emotion is love. Top-down, what holds together a top-down structure that has to force people and confiscate resources from people to keep its welfare warfare state going?
Fear.
Yep. So you have love versus fear. And from that, you have freedom versus control, non-coercion versus force, local control versus centralized planning, government owning our car companies and everything else, abundant creativity versus stifled creativity, optimism versus despair, strong families versus breakdown of families. And boy, you can look at East Germany and West Germany. That's two good models to look at. What happened in East Germany when the Soviet Union turned it into a socialist state versus West Germany? Or South Korea, North Korea is even a better example. Or China before they allowed freedom back into the country. So I was over in Hong Kong. I tell you, you want to see people who love freedom and love free enterprise. Spend 6 weeks in Hong Kong, like I did. Man, those people are working 18 hours a day. They all want what we have. They want freedom and they want prosperity. Universal opportunity versus concentrated power. And ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, it's prosperity versus poverty. So this is the fundamental. I did all this, the first 3 or 4 chapters of this book, so that you would have something to share with people who maybe aren't awake yet, and be able to explain the difference between bottom-up and top-down. And then, the rest of the book, and I'm not going to spend much time on this at all, is about how a country where people are in a bottom-up society and can use their full potential and their free will as human beings, the creativity and the intelligence flows, and all the problems that we have can be solved better from the bottom up. And I give all kinds of examples about how problems can be solved much better in bottom up in terms of economics, monetary system, international government, welfare, education, healthcare, environment, drugs, and defense and foreign relations. How bottom-up, freedom-based solutions work so much better. So the book is very positive. It explains the fundamental principles we just went through, but then it gives solutions to problems that will be able to, that we look at the drug situation in this country as an absolutely insolvable problem. Well, yeah, it's an insolvable problem because we're expecting the government to solve our drug problem. It's just, think about it. It's an instrument of force. They can't even get the drugs out of the prisons. In fact, the parents that have children in prison are more concerned about them becoming drug addicts in prison than before they got to prison. That's true.